to Crossroads. In today's episode, we'll be talking about how the Georgia District Attorney is being accused of having an affair that, interestingly, could result in the Trump charges in Georgia getting dropped. And this seems to be a big pattern happening right now, where the legal attacks on Trump seem to be falling apart. Also, there was a false alarm in Taiwan, where I'm reporting right now live, that makes people think a CCP missile was heading to the island. It turns out it was a false alarm. I'll explain that and what happened. And also, we'll be discussing why Taiwan's elections matter for America and the world. Again, folks, I'm in Taiwan currently. I'll be covering the elections here on Saturday, and should be putting together a special feature for y'all on what it means once it's all said and done. First of all, though, let me show you this. In Georgia, the district attorney, Fani Willis, who's involved in the racketeering charges against Trump and his associates, you know, the one trying to suggest that they had conspired to rig the elections and overthrow democracy and all this, that entire case could get thrown out very soon. Basically what happened is the Georgia District Attorney, again, Fani Willis, is now being accused of having an affair, which is not technically criminal, but it's with the special prosecutor who helped get the grand jury indictment against Trump in Georgia, where she's the district attorney and where she's leading the charges on this. Look, not only could this end the entire case against Trump and all of his associates in Georgia, but some are suggesting this could even possibly result in criminal charges against Fani Willis, not against Trump. Let me show you, a New York Post said this. It said Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis had an improper and clandestine relationship with the married special prosecutor who assisted in securing Georgia's grand jury indictment against former President Donald Trump, a co-defendant in the election interference case alleged Monday. It notes the bombshell court filing made by former Trump 2020 campaign official Michael Roman argues that Willis, the DA, should be disqualified from the case and the charges against him dropped Trump because the district attorney chose to appoint her romantic partner who at all times relevant to this prosecution has been a married man. In the case, it says. It notes as well that Roman contends that Nathan Wade, a private attorney with the Atlanta-based Wade and Campbell firm, used some of the nearly $654,000 in legal fees that he's been paid by the Fulton County DA's office, notably under Fani Willis, for his work on the Trump case, to take Fani Willis, the person giving him the money for this case, on lavish vacations to Napa Valley, California, Florida, and the Caribbean, possibly being, ironically, a case of corruption in a case looking into corruption going after the former President Donald Trump. Now, look, keep in mind, this is an allegation, right? This is part of the legal defense of Donald J. Trump. Take it for what it's worth. We're going to have to see whether this holds up, whether it is proven to be true or false. But, you know, if Trump's lawyers are putting it in their case, we assume they have the evidence, and we'll see. That being said, you know, Trump has been accusing Fani Willis of having improper relationships with gangsters and so on. And, you know, the media claims it's all a bunch of fake news. You know, we'll see. It's all going into the court record right now, where the Trump team is challenging these charges based on things they believe, you know, are strong enough to get the case thrown out. We'll see what happens with it. That being said, this is not the only case that's in, let's say, in peril for the people targeting Trump. You also have, for example, the case even from Jack Smith, special counsel, possibly getting thrown out in its entirety, and possibly all the charges getting thrown out if it turns out that Trump does in fact have, and we'll see whether it's going to be determined by the Supreme Court, whether Trump has or does not have presidential immunity against criminal charges like this. Again, the Supreme Court is taking up that case. Keep in mind, in addition to that, the Supreme Court will also take up the case of several people being accused within the whole January 6th narrative. And they're going to be determining whether the act of disrupting an official proceeding, the main charge used against most of the J6 defendants, is something that can be used in the way they're trying to use it. Remember, the crime of disrupting an official proceeding is not about protesting Congress or having the great walkthrough of the Capitol building or even, some of the rioting that did take place that day. Disrupting an official proceeding was a charge mainly about destroying evidence when there's a court case, and was made specifically for Enron. Now, they've of course interpreted that and applied it for the first time ever for something like this. And the Supreme Court is going to determine whether it can be used in such a case. If they determine it cannot be used, that means not only will the charges be thrown out for the 3 individuals bringing the case, but it will also mean that every single indictment that has been used against the J6ers and everybody that charge was used against in order to get their plea deals, all of those cases will have to be re-examined. And as those, many of them will very likely get thrown out. We don't know how many, we don't know where it's going to go. But that will also damage the ability of them to target Trump using January 6th as a narrative, suggesting it was an insurrection, because a lot of it's based on that narrative. And in addition to that as well, the Supreme Court is going to be taking up also the case of the 14th Amendment and whether Trump, for example, can even run for president. Of course, the J6 trials with the Supreme Court could overturn that in and of themselves. The Supreme Court case looking into whether Trump had legal immunity can get that thrown out. But even aside from those, aside from all of that, the Supreme Court is going to be looking specifically at the 14th Amendment case and determine whether or not they can take Trump off the ballots using that narrative. In other words, it seems right now like the Supreme Court, on any of these, if they rule, is going to eliminate at least the bulwark of the charges against Trump. And the stuff with Fani Willis is just some cream on the top with all that. That said, something interesting happened. I'm reporting live from Taiwan currently. The elections here are going to be held on Saturday, local time. That's going to be for the president of Taiwan and for the legislature. The Chinese Communist Party is actively trying to interfere with the elections, literally, in a very real sense. I'll be covering more of that going forward. Before the elections, maybe on Friday, we'll go real deep into it. But let me show you a very strange alert that went out yesterday right here in Taiwan. This was a screenshot from my cell phone, and everybody who was here apparently got this same alert. And it said, "Air raid alert, missile flyover Taiwan airspace, be aware." Be aware of those missiles flying over, because there's an air raid alert. I'd assume if a missile strike was coming, you'd have to be a little more than aware. It turns out, though, this was a translation error. A lot of media reported on the English translation of this, where it actually did say, again, you can look at my screenshot, "Air raid alert, missile flyover Taiwan airspace, be aware." But the Chinese language, of course, as you can see, there's both Chinese and English on the text. The Chinese text says it was a satellite, not a missile. And it appears the Taiwanese leadership has clarified this was actually just a translation error. There was no missile attack on Taiwan. It was unfortunately an error they made in the translation. Maybe fortunately, I'm glad we didn't get hit by missiles while I'm here.